Le voy a presentar una entrevista que realizó Pascal Beltrán del Río al escritor, guionista y director de cine estadounidense Paul Auster en el marco de la Feria Internacional del Libro de Guadalajara. Entre sus libros más conocidos se encuentran la trilogía de Nueva York de 1987, Moon Palace en 1989 y La música del azar en 1990, entre otras. Aquí le presento la entrevista completa, muy interesante.
Paul Auster, welcome to Mexico.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I'm glad to be here.
You've talked about the way you became a writer, the day you didn't have a pen to get Willie Mae's autograph. Would you say that that was the defining moment in your life?
No, it's a joke. The story is true. I was 8 years old. I went to my first Major League game. It was 1955. Willie Mays had become a national hero in the 1954 World Series just a few months earlier. I had seen the famous catch on TV. He had become my favorite ball player. And I was at the game at the Polo Grounds, and afterwards he was there on the street, and I asked him for an autograph, and I didn't have a pencil. He didn't have a pencil. My parents didn't have one, and I went away very disappointed.
So that is all true?
That's all true. He said, sorry kid, ain't got no pencil, can't give no autograph. And from then on, I started carrying a pen or a pencil in my pocket. But the end of the story is a kind of a joke. I thought, well, if there's a pen or a pencil in your pocket, maybe one day you'll feel that you might want to use it. And then, next paragraph, as I like to tell my children, that's how I became a writer. But that's not how I became a writer, of course.
And you eventually, 50 years later, you got that baseball.
That's right. You read the epilogue to the story, which is a remarkable thing. Yeah, 52 years later, Willie Mays was read the story out loud by his neighbors, who were friends of friend of mine, and he almost broke down crying. He was so moved. And he signed a baseball, and the friends gave it to my friend, and now I have it. Of course, it didn't mean anything to me then, but I was pleased that the story concluded.
But anyway, do you think if you had carried a pen that day and he had signed the ball, would you have become a writer?
Yes, yes, of course. But I can remember my first impulses to write, and I was very young. I was 9, so it was not long after this Willie Mays story. I was walking on a Saturday morning through a little park in the town where I lived, and it was early spring, and I remember feeling how wonderful it was that winter was over and the warm weather was starting to come, and I said to myself, I want to write a poem about this. Why? I don't know. And I walked into the little town, and I bought a little pad and a pen, and I sat down in the park, and I wrote probably the worst poem ever written by a human being in all of history. But there was something that happened in that moment of writing that it created a feeling that I had never experienced before, a feeling of connectedness to the world around me in a way that I had never known. And it was so exhilarating to feel that connection that I kept on writing after that. And so I've always been writing all my life.
How did you become interested in the power of random, of chance, in defining people's lives?
Well, I don't think it's the only thing that defines people's lives. It's just something that I've remarked on because it happens with such numbing frequency, the unexpected bursting into our lives all the time. This is the definition of the word accident, no? I mean, accident is something in philosophy that is not necessary, but it happens anyway. And in common language, it means something unexpected that usually is harmful to us. Oh, I had a car accident, or I had an accident, I fell down the stairs and broke my leg. Well, when you wake up in the morning, you're not expecting that you're going to fall down the stairs and break your leg. It just happens. And a lot of life is like that. Look, you just went through a horrible earthquake in Mexico. People didn't wake up that morning and say, well, I guess today there's going to be an earthquake, better prepare for it. It just, boom, you're in it, and it's on top of you, and it can kill you. And this is the way the world works. So I'm just trying to be faithful to my view of reality.
In Nadia, André Breton's book, he says that there is no such thing as fate, that our lives are guided by millions of individual decisions. What do you think about that?
Well, I think he's right, but also our lives are not just guided, well, not our decisions necessarily. Somebody's decision. Somebody else's decision. If you're living in Nazi Germany, your life is guided by Hitler's decisions, for example. Someone is making it up. I mean, we're sitting in this room in a hotel, and every single thing in this room, all the lights, the wood here, the wall, it was somebody's idea. Someone thought, well, I want lights that look like this. And then they manufactured the lights. I want wood that looks like this. But it could be completely different. Somebody else's idea would create a room that didn't look like this one at all.
You've described writing as a solitary job, and you would probably not recommend it to everyone. What do you think about that?
Well, I stick by that. It's not something that most people would want to do. I don't think most people want to live their lives shut up in rooms every day, putting words on pieces of paper. I think many people would rather slit their wrists than have to do that. So the people who become writers, and also painters, it's the same kind of solitary activity, or composer of music, any one of the arts, appeals to people who have a taste for being alone, that they enjoy it. It's not a hardship at all. I have no problem spending that time by myself. I've often felt that this compulsion to make art, which in my case started early, and I think with most people it starts early, I think of it as a kind of a disease. And you catch it and you never get cured. But most people don't catch this disease. But when you do, that's it. You can't do anything else. You're just on that road for the rest of your life.
You've said you still type your manuscripts. What is your take on technology, on cell phones, computers?
I write by hand in notebooks, and then I type it up on my old manual typewriter. But of course, this is a new world, so I do have someone who then takes my typescript and types it up on a computer, so that when I hand it into my publisher, it's a digital version, which is what they want. Personally, about this new digital age that we live in, I have very, very mixed feelings about it. I see the benefits, and I also see the harmful effects that it's created. I myself do not own a computer, nor do I have a cell phone. I've just played dinosaur through all this, and I've managed to survive. I figure if people need to get in touch with me, they'll figure out a way. And I look at everyone I know, my wife included, overwhelmed by email. And everyone is always complaining about the unanswered mail that they have, that it's impossible to keep up.
So you don't want to go there?
Why should I? I got along perfectly fine before it, and I'm surviving now without it as well. So listen, if I were 20, I would do it, but I'm not. I'm 70, and I don't feel the necessity of going digital.
You've seen the large lines here at the book fair. You saw the crowd yesterday at the presentation. Isn't it extraordinary that the book, this item that many people think is obsolete in the times of social media and such, still creates this kind of sensation?
It is interesting and reassuring. Listen, most people are not readers of books, but there's still millions of people out there who take great pleasure in literature. And I think the reason is kind of twofold. One, human beings have an innate need for stories. It's something that we experience from the early days of our early childhood. Every culture has created its myths and stories about itself, from the most primitive societies to the most sophisticated. Then, on top of this hunger for stories, I believe a novel is the one place left in the world, maybe the only place, the one place that was ever in the world, in which two strangers can meet on terms of absolute intimacy. Think about it. It's a collaboration between the writer and the reader. And every reader reads a different book from every other reader, because every reader brings his or her life and experiences and memories to the book. And it's an extraordinarily intimate thing. And I think people, once they get used to this, they love it so much that they want to keep experiencing that feeling. And that's why people keep reading books.
And they feel, you've written about this in one of your novels, they feel they own the writer for a while.
Sometimes that can happen. People can get a little demented about it also. But because of that intimate connection. And then some people who are a little unbalanced, let's say, can carry that too far.
These times are confusing for many. You yourself have said that times have always been confusing, but people used to have some kind of explanation. There was Marxism and there was fascism. You've talked about this and written about this. Do we need some kind of explanation of the times we're living?
I think so, and I think there has been no big new idea since Marxism, I think. And Marxism hasn't worked because it failed. But for 150 years or so, it was like a second religion for people, and they believed in it, and it consoled them. They had some vision of what the future might be. I don't think we have any really good counter-argument to capitalism anymore. And because of that, capitalism is triumphant everywhere, and there's no philosophical argument to how to resist it. And I think this has created a lot of unhappiness and a lot of confusion, because capitalism, has generated all kinds of miraculous results, but also incredible misery among millions and millions of people.
Finally, had you been to Mexico before?
Oh yeah, a few times. Yeah, I first came here all the way back in 1972.
What do you find attractive in Mexico, intriguing in terms of a literary force?
Well, I think it's not just Mexico, it's all of Latin America is a bubbling cauldron of literary ferment, and I think it's one of the most exciting places in the world. And people really care about it, and you've produced so many great writers and poets. I think it's something that Mexico and countries in South America, Central America should feel very proud of. It's something that it's been a huge contribution to the world, what's happened in this part of the world.